Mara Hart, 34-year-old wife of Damon Hart, stood at the entrance of her husband's company party while hundreds of investors, employees, and photographers watched. Damon Hart, 38-year-old husband of Mara Hart and founder of Hart Meridian Group, looked at her simple ivory dress with disgust, then pointed toward the exit. Beside him, Tessa Royce, 31-year-old mistress and public relations director of Damon Hart, smiled like she had been waiting all night to see Mara reduced in front of everyone. Damon said, "Remove her, she has no place here." The ballroom went silent. Glasses stopped halfway to lips, phones rose, employees stared, investors whispered, no one helped her. Mara kept her face calm, but her fingers shook around her clutch. To everyone watching, she looked ordinary, almost out of place beneath the gold lights and expensive suits. They saw a quiet wife in an old ivory dress and thought Damon had outgrown her. They did not know that same dress was the one she wore when Damon signed his first office lease. They did not know she had fixed his speeches, corrected his numbers, protected his reputation, and opened the first door that saved his company before anyone in that ballroom cared about his name. Then Reed Cross, 36-year-old bodyguard hired by Damon Hart for the event, stepped forward. Damon had hired Reed through an outside security contractor to block Mara, shame her, and make her look like an unwanted woman begging for attention. But Damon did not know that Reed was once the security chief trusted by Silas Vale, 63-year-old father of Mara Hart. And Reed knew the one name Damon had never bothered to understand. Mara was not just Mara Hart. She was Mara Vale, hidden daughter of the man whose trust had quietly backed Damon's company when no bank trusted him, no investor believed him, and no expansion deal could survive without risk protection. The signed agreements, silent partnership records, archived company deck, and Vale Shield Trust documents could freeze Damon's expansion deal, expose his lies, and pull the floor out from under the empire he claimed he built alone. While Damon thought Mara was weak, Mara was actually holding his company, his reputation, and his future in her hands. Reed stopped in front of her. Damon expected him to drag her out. Instead, Reed lowered his head and bowed. "Miss Vale," he said, "forgive me, I did not know he meant you." Mara looked at Damon, then calmly said, "Put the original company deck on the screen." The night Damon tried to break Mara was the night Mara finally decided his lies no longer deserved her silence. This isn't just a story about public humiliation. It is about what happens when a proud man mocks someone he does not truly know while standing on power that secretly belongs to her. Dear viewers, thank you for being here. If you watch without subscribing, it is like letting Mara's strength be ignored again. When you subscribe, you stand with every quiet soul who was mocked, underestimated, and still chose to rise. Please subscribe now and comment where you're watching from. Mara Hart's hand froze over the keyboard when she saw the missing slide. It was 1:17 in the morning. The whole house was dark, but her private study glowed with the cold light of her laptop. The room was silent except for the soft hum of the computer and the sound of her own breathing, which had suddenly become too loud. Mara Hart, 34, was Damon Hart's wife, and the quiet woman many people believed had done nothing except stand beside him at events. They did not know she had helped build his company from the shadows. They did not know she had corrected his first pitch, saved his first lease, and opened doors Damon thought had opened because the world had finally noticed him. On the laptop screen was the final presentation for Damon's company party. One slide was gone. The file history showed its title like a ghost. Silent Partnership Disclosure, Vale Shield Trust. Mara stared at the title until the words blurred. That slide was not decoration. It was not a family detail. It was a required disclosure from the original expansion package, the quiet legal footprint of the help her family had given Damon years ago, when no bank trusted him and no investor wanted to risk $1 on his name. Someone had deleted it, and Mara already knew who wanted her erased before the celebration began. A message appeared on the side of her screen. Cole Brenner. I'm sorry to send this so late. Damon hated the speech draft. Tessa says it's final, but investors may not like the tone. Could you look at it like you used to, quietly? Cole Brenner, 42, was Damon's chief financial officer and one of the few people at Heart Meridian Group who knew Mara had shaped Damon's best business moments. Cole never said it publicly. Men like Cole survived by knowing the truth, and pretending silence was neutrality. Mara opened the speech. The title read, Heart Meridian Group, a new era of leadership. The first line made her chest tighten. I built this company alone, with no favors, no handouts, and no one standing behind me. Mara did not move. Damon Hart, 38, was her husband and the founder of Heart Meridian Group. The world saw him as a sharp, self-made businessman who had risen from nothing through discipline and force. Mara remembered the man who once shook before small investor meetings and cried in an empty office because he feared he would fail. No one standing behind him. She almost laughed, but the sound would have broken her. She knew the rhythm of the speech was not Damon's. It was too polished, too cold, too hungry for applause. It belonged to Tessa Royce, 31, Damon's public relations director, and the woman Mara had begun to suspect was more than an employee. Tessa wrote like she dressed, bright, sharp, and designed to replace someone. Mara placed her fingers on the keyboard. She should have closed the laptop. She should have let Damon walk onto that stage and sound exactly as proud, false, and empty as Tessa had made him. Instead, she deleted the sentence. She typed, No company rises alone. Every success is built on unseen faith, quiet sacrifice, and the people who believed before the world applauded. Then she stopped, because the sentence was not just better. It was true. Years earlier, Damon had stood with her inside his first rented office. There were no desks, only one folding chair, one cracked window, and a cardboard box of cheap pens. The landlord had almost cancelled the lease because Damon's payment came late. Damon had looked around the empty room with shame in his eyes. I hate that you have to see me like this, he had said. Mara had taken his hand. Then let me see you until you become who you're trying to be. That night, while Damon slept with worry lines on his face, Mara called a private number linked to her father's network. She asked for one introduction. Not money, she told herself, just a chance. Just one door opened wide enough for Damon to walk through without knowing who had touched the handle. By morning, Damon had a meeting that saved the lease. He never knew. Mara kept editing. Another line said Damon had created his own discipline method. Her eyes dropped to his famous phrase, breathe, pause, believe. She remembered writing those words on his palm before his first public pitch. Damon had been shaking so hard he could barely hold the folder. She had closed his fingers around the words and whispered them until he could speak. Years later, interviewers praised him for the phrase. He smiled and called it his personal rule. He never said it came from her. Mara kept going, but every sentence felt like touching an old bruise. Then another memory rose. A business magazine had once asked Damon who believed in him first. Mara had been in the kitchen, unseen, holding a glass of water. Damon had answered, no one, that's why I had to believe in myself. The glass had almost slipped from her hand. He did not know she heard. That day, she told herself successful men sometimes needed stories bigger than the truth. She told herself silence was love. She told herself one lie in an interview did not erase every private moment they had shared. Now at 1:17 in the morning, she wondered how many times love had only taught Damon that she could be deleted. Her phone buzzed. A message from Damon. Don't come early tomorrow. Tessa has arranged security. I don't want confusion at the entrance. Mara read it once, then again. Security. Confusion. She was his wife, not an intruder. A second message came in before she could breathe. Sealer's Veil. When a man deletes your name in private, he is preparing to deny you in public. Sealer's Veil, 63, was Mara's father and the powerful founder of Veil Shield, the private security and risk network Damon only partly knew about. Sealers had warned her before marriage that a man who hated feeling small might one day hate the woman who had seen him weak. Mara opened the folder labeled Early Heart Meridian. Inside were old loan notes, pitch drafts, lease corrections, investor comments, scanned guarantees, and the archived expansion deck that had saved Damon's first major deal. At the bottom was the name, Veil Shield Trust. Mara touched the screen gently. This was not about money. It was about all the love Damon had turned into proof that she was never there. She saved the corrected speech and sent one copy back to Cole. Then she saved another copy for herself. File name, Truth Copy. After that, she opened the deleted slide history again. The system did not show a clean deletion. It showed a revision chain. The slide had existed in the investor disclosure package, had been moved into the event deck, then removed from the final presentation less than an hour after Tessa received editing access. Mara took screenshots, not because she planned revenge, because for the first time she understood silence needed evidence if truth was going to survive powerful people. Her phone buzzed again. Cole, I should not have asked you to fix it. I'm sorry. Mara stared at the message. Then she typed, No, you were right to ask. But tomorrow, if the truth comes up, do not ask me to stand alone while you hide behind a job title. She waited. The typing dots appeared, then vanished. Cole did not answer. That silence told her what kind of night was coming. Mara closed the laptop but did not leave the study. The house around her felt too large and too empty. Somewhere down the hallway, Damon's side of the bed waited untouched because he had stayed late at the office again, or with Tessa, or wherever men went when they wanted the comfort of marriage without the presence of a wife. Mara looked at the black screen and saw her reflection. Quiet, tired, still wearing the name Hart. Tomorrow was supposed to be Damon's celebration, but every deleted slide, every rewritten sentence, every message about security, and every unanswered plea from Cole pointed to something else. Tomorrow was not going to be a celebration. It was going to be a door. And somewhere beyond that door, someone had already been hired to keep her out. Mara almost dropped the wooden box when she saw her real name. Mara Veil. The letters stared back at her from an old cream-colored invitation, sharp and alive, like something buried had suddenly started breathing again. She stood inside the locked archive room Damon always called your little memory closet. He had said it with a laugh the first time he saw the door. To him, it was just a small room full of old boxes and family papers. He never cared enough to ask why Mara kept it locked. Now, after seeing the deleted Veil Shield Trust slide on Damon's presentation, that locked room felt less like a memory closet and more like the only place in the house that still knew who she was. The room was dark except for the thin light from the hallway. No diamonds sat on shelves, no expensive bags, no gold-framed portraits. Mara's wealth was not displayed anywhere. It was hidden in boxes, just like her power, just like her name. She placed the wooden box on the desk and opened it fully. Inside were pieces of a life she had folded away to become Damon's wife, an invitation addressed to Mara Veil, her mother's obituary, a hospital visitor sticker, a broken silver chain, an old Veil Shield access card, and a sealed envelope written in her father's handwriting. Her fingers touched the invitation first. Years ago, before Damon, Mara had been known as the only daughter of Sealer's Vale. She had grown up behind guarded gates, quiet hallways, and doors that opened only after someone else checked if it was safe. Every school event had a security man standing near the exit. Every new friend was quietly investigated. Every boy who smiled at her was watched from a distance. Even freedom felt borrowed. Mara never hated Sealers for protecting her, but she hated being treated like something valuable instead of someone human. After her mother died, Mara began using her mother's surname in public. Lane. It sounded normal. Zovd. Unimportant. That was the name Damon first knew. Not Mara Vale. Mara Lane. She remembered the first day clearly. Damon sat alone after a failed business workshop, staring at a notebook full of crossed-out ideas while everyone else exchanged cards and laughed too loudly. He looked tired, proud, and ashamed all at once. Mara sat beside him. He did not flirt. He did not ask who she knew. He only looked at the crowded room and said, "You ever feel like the room decided you don't belong before you even speak?" Mara had answered every day for different reasons. Damon thought she meant shyness or struggle. He did not know she meant being trapped by a name people feared, respected, or wanted to use. That was why she fell for him. Damon made her feel ordinary because he had no idea she was not. Months later, when they became serious, Mara almost told him the truth. They were walking outside after dinner, and she had practiced the words all day. "My real name is Vale. My father is not just in security. My family is powerful." But before she could speak, Damon said something that stopped her. "I can't stand rich people who pretend their help is love," he said. "I want to build something that belongs to me." Mara went cold. She heard the pain under his words. Damon did not hate wealth only because he lacked it. He hated feeling small beside it. So Mara swallowed the truth and gave him only a piece of it. "My father works in private security," she told him. Damon laughed. "So he's intense." Mara smiled sadly. "That's one word for it." From that day, she began editing herself for Damon's comfort. First her name, then her family, then her help, then her pain. Mara looked down at the sealed envelope in the box. Her father had given it to her the night before her wedding. She remembered Sealers standing in her childhood home, holding the envelope like it was heavier than paper. "If you marry a man without telling him the size of your shadow," he said, "one day he may punish you for standing in it." Mara had cried then, angry and hurt. "Damon loves me because he doesn't know any of that." Sealers' answer had been quiet. "Then you do not know if he loves you beyond the part you made easy for him." She had never opened the envelope. Until now. Her hands trembled as she tore it open. Inside was one document, a clean summary of the early guarantee that Vale Shield Trust had given Heart Meridian Group. It listed the risk protection terms, the silent support structure, and the disclosure requirement that had to appear in investor-facing materials connected to expansion financing. At the bottom was a note from Sealers. "I did this because you asked me to help him without humiliating him. Do not let him use your mercy as proof you were never there." Mara pressed the page to her chest. The tears came quietly. Not wild tears, not loud ones. Just the tired kind that fall when someone finally understands she may have loved a man by protecting the wrong part of him. Then her eyes caught the hospital visitor sticker. A different memory rose. Reed Cross, 36, had once been a security chief at Vale Shield and the man trusted to protect Mara years before Damon ever knew her. Back then, Mara had slipped away from a charity event because she wanted 1 hour without guards. A car followed her. 2 men stepped out. Before fear could swallow her voice, Reed stepped between them and said, "Walk behind me, Miss Vale." Later, in the medical room, She gave him a silver compass engraved with 4 words. Stand where truth stands. Reed lowered his head when he accepted it. Not like a servant, like a man accepting a vow. Then he told her, wanting freedom does not make you foolish. It only means the cage was real. Mara touched the old visitor sticker. Reed, she whispered. She had not seen him in years. After her wedding, Reed had requested reassignment. Mara had thought Sealers sent him away because he disapproved of Damon. She had never asked. Back then, asking questions about her father's security choices always made her feel like a child again. Her phone rang. Sealers. Mara answered with a shaking breath. Dad. Sealers' voice was calm but not soft. Damon's company hired event security for tomorrow through Northline. Mara stiffened. Northline Security was a corporate contractor that had once worked under Veil Shield's network before separating into a public-facing firm. It handled events for clients who wanted professional protection without appearing connected to Sealers Veil. Why would Damon use Northline? Because Tessa wanted a clean outside vendor, Sealers said, because Damon wanted distance, and because proud men often hire the truth without recognizing it. Mara closed her eyes. Who did they assign? A pause followed. Then Sealers said, Reed Cross. Mara's breath caught. Sealers continued, he was not given your photo. The brief names you only as Mara Hart, possible disruption risk. No maiden name, no family connection, no threat assessment, just an instruction to stop you if you arrive. Mara looked at the open box, the envelope, the visitor sticker, and the old name she had buried. He doesn't know Damon's wife is me, she said. No, Sealers answered, and I did not tell him. Mara's eyes opened. Why? Because if I tell him before anything happens, Damon will say you staged the confrontation. If Reed recognizes you only when Damon dishonors you in public, then Damon will have created his own witness. The cold realism of it struck her. Sealers was not being dramatic. He was building a record before Damon could rewrite it. Sealers added, I sent Reed a limited instruction. Observe, do not reveal yourself unless Mara is publicly dishonored. Protect her name, not only her body. Mara's throat tightened. You think he'll understand? If the night turns cruel, Sealers said, trust the man who lowers his head before he speaks. The call ended. Mara stood in the archive room, surrounded by everything she had hidden. Tomorrow, Damon would bring security to the door. But he had no idea the door might remember her name first. By noon, Mara had already been turned into a security threat. Her name was no longer listed as Damon's wife. It sat on a restricted event sheet in red letters. Hold AT entry, personal disruption risk. The top floor of Hart Meridian Group looked like a luxury war room. Staff members hurried past glass walls with printed programs, flower samples, sponsor cards, and tablets glowing with last-minute changes. Every screen showed Damon's face beside the same 3 lines. A new era. A single vision. One man's rise. That last line was everywhere. One man's rise. It was not an accident. It was the story Damon wanted the world to believe. Inside the executive conference room, Damon stood near the window, reading his speech from a tablet. Tessa stood beside the long table with a red pen in her hand, controlling the room like the party was not an event, but a takeover. Elaine Hart, 64, was Damon's mother and Mara's mother-in-law. Elaine had always believed Damon deserved a wife who made him look richer, louder, and more important. Mara's quietness had always offended her because it reminded Elaine of where Damon started before the money made him easier to praise. Tessa tapped the speech with her pen. The speech is stronger now, she said. I kept the rhythm but removed the weakness. Damon looked down at the page. Tessa had used Mara's corrected lines, but stripped out the humility. The words flowed better now because Mara had fixed them, but the heart was gone because Tessa had cut it out. Cole stood near the wall, holding a folder too tightly. He knew. He had sent the speech to Mara the night before. He knew the rhythm belonged to her. But he said nothing. Elaine looked at the seating chart and smiled. Good, Mara's name is not here. Damon's eyes flicked toward the page. Elaine's smile widened. That girl always looked like she was apologizing for breathing. Damon did not defend his wife. The silence lasted only a second, but it said more than any insult could have. Tessa watched him carefully. She knew when to press a wound. She placed a printed invitation on the table. It read, Mr. Damon Hart and guest. Damon frowned. That went to the house. Tessa smiled. Yes, let her see what she is now. Cole shifted uncomfortably. Elaine gave a soft laugh. Damon looked at Tessa. That was unnecessary. His voice was weak, not angry, not protective, just uncomfortable. Tessa stepped closer. Cruel would be letting her walk in tonight and embarrass herself. Controlled is better. Then she touched the tablet and opened the entrance plan. Mara's name appeared again in red. Hold AT entry, personal disruption risk. Cole finally spoke. She is legally his wife. Tessa turned to him. And emotionally unstable wives are still security risks when they interrupt corporate events. Cole's face tightened, but he went quiet again. Damon looked at the red words. Something in him hesitated. For one breath, the room around him changed. He was not standing in glass and wealth anymore. He was younger, sweating in the bathroom of a cheap event hall before his first investor dinner. His hands had been shaking so badly he could not hold his notes. Mara had stood outside the bathroom door, reading his speech aloud until his breathing slowed. You don't need to sound rich, she had told him. You need to sound honest. That line had saved him. It had made him walk into the room like a man with nothing to hide. Now he had everything to hide. Damon blinked and the memory vanished. Tessa had seen the hesitation. She moved closer and adjusted his tie. That woman loved you when you were small, Damon, she said softly. I love the man you became. The words went straight to the part of him he hated most. Small. Damon hated that word. He hated the old rooms, old suits, old fear, and old witnesses. And no one was a greater witness to his old life than Mara. Elaine leaned back and added, Mara keeps you tied to failure. Tessa understands your future. Damon looked once more at the red label beside Mara's name. Then his conscience folded under his pride. Fine, he said, but no chaos. Tessa smiled. No chaos, just optics. A knock sounded. Grant Ellis, 29, was the staff event coordinator managing the company party logistics. He opened the door with a headset over one ear and a clipboard pressed against his chest. Northline Security is here. Damon straightened. Send him in. Reed Cross entered the room in a charcoal suit, calm and silent. Damon looked at him like a weapon he had purchased. Tessa looked at him like a tool. Elaine looked at him like a wall Mara would not pass. Reed looked at the room like a man trained to notice lies. Tessa handed him a security brief. We may have a personal disruption tonight, she said. Reed read the page. Subject, Mara Hart. Possible emotional disruption. Deny ballroom access unless cleared by Mr. Hart. There was no photo. No maiden name. No mention of veil. No written threat. Reed's eyes paused on the name Mara, but his face did not change. Has Mrs. Hart threatened anyone? He asked. Damon's jaw tightened. No. Has she been formally banned from the property? Tessa answered before Damon could. This is not about law, this is about judgment. Reed looked up. Security without law becomes intimidation. Tessa's smile cooled. Damon stepped forward. I don't need philosophy. If she arrives, stop her. Reed held his gaze. Stop her from harming someone or stop her from being seen. The room went quiet. Cole glanced at Reed with something like fear and relief. Tessa's voice sliced through the silence. Stop her from damaging the evening. There it was. Not safety. Image. Reed placed the brief on the table. I will not lay hands on a non-violent guest unless there is a lawful safety reason. Damon's face hardened. You work for me tonight. Reed answered evenly. I work the assignment. The assignment is event safety, not personal humiliation. For a moment, Damon looked like he might argue. Then he remembered the guests, the investors, the cameras, and the story he wanted to tell. He waved Reed away. Just be at the entrance. Reed turned and walked out. In the hallway, his phone vibrated. A secure message appeared from Sealers. Observe, do not reveal yourself unless Mara is publicly dishonored. Protect her name, not only her body. Reed stopped. The name Mara pressed against an old memory. A hospital room. A young woman's shaking hands. A silver compass placed on a bedside table. 4 engraved words. Stand where truth stands. Reed touched the compass inside his jacket. Through the glass wall, he looked back at Damon, Tessa, and Elaine, standing over the guest list like they were planning the removal of a problem, not the treatment of a wife. He still did not know that Mara Hart was Mara Vale. But before the night even began, Reed already knew someone was about to be dishonored. The applause hit Mara before she even reached the ballroom door. It rolled through the hallway like a warning. Bright gold lights spilled from the entrance, cameras flashed, guests laughed softly over glasses of champagne. On the giant screen inside the ballroom, Damon's face looked larger than life, smiling above the words. Hart Meridian Group, one man's rise. Mara stopped walking. She wore the ivory dress from Damon's first office signing. Years ago, he had held her hand in that dress and said it made him feel like his future had finally begun. Tonight, she had not worn it to please him. She had worn it as proof. Proof that she had been there before the lights. Proof that she remembered the beginning he now wanted to erase. Damon's voice came through the speakers. Hart Meridian was built by discipline, sacrifice, and the courage to stand alone. Mara's fingers tightened around her small clutch. Stand alone. The words were familiar, but the heart was missing. He had kept the rhythm she fixed the night before, but Tessa had removed the humility. That hurt more than if he had ignored Mara's work completely. He was still using her. He was just not namming her. Mara took one steady breath and walked to the registration desk. Lena Morris, 24, was the temporary event registration assistant hired by Hart Meridian to check guest names at the company party. She did not know she was standing at the first line of a planned humiliation. Name, please, Lena asked. Mara Hart. Lena searched the tablet. Her polite smile faded. She searched again. I'm sorry, she said. I don't see that name. Mara felt the room tilt slightly, but her voice stayed calm. Try Mara Lane. Lena typed again. Nothing. Mara swallowed. The next name felt like opening a locked door in public. Try Mara Vale. Lena's finger hovered over the screen. Before she could type, a voice came from behind Mara. There's no need. Mara turned. Tessa stood a few steps away, smiling like she had arrived exactly on time. She is not on tonight's approved guest list, Tessa said. Mara studied her face. You were waiting for me. Tessa's smile widened. Damon was afraid you'd misunderstand the tone of the evening. The words were soft, but the insult was clear. Mara did not belong here. Mara did not understand this level. Mara was supposed to feel small before she even entered. A few employees slowed near the entrance. One photographer lowered his camera, then raised it again. Mara felt the trap forming around her, one witness at a time. Tessa looked down at the ivory dress. That dress again, she said. You really do live in old chapters. For a second, Mara was back in Damon's first office, standing beside one folding chair and a cardboard box of pens. Damon had been so nervous that day. He had whispered, "One day, this will all mean something." Mara looked at Tessa now. Some old chapters are where the truth was written. Tessa's smile flickered. Then Elaine stepped out from the ballroom. Her pearls shone under the gold lights, and her face carried the calm cruelty of a woman who believed the room was already on her side. "Mara, dear," Elaine said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "This is humiliating. For you, I mean." Mara turned to her. Elaine continued, "A wife should know when her husband's world has grown beyond her." The words struck deep, but Mara did not lower her eyes. A husband's world does not grow beyond the woman who helped him build it. Elaine laughed. "Helped, you arranged flowers and held his hand. Don't confuse comfort with contribution." That one hurt. Not because it was true, but because Mara had let them believe it. She had hidden the calls, the corrections, the introductions, the late nights. She had made her love look like background noise. Cole appeared behind Elaine, pale and tense. Mara looked at him. "Cole, tell them I was part of the early files." Cole froze. His eyes filled with the memory he did not want. 3 years earlier, Damon had sat in a conference room with 2 investors, minutes away from presenting numbers that did not balance. Mara had noticed from the back of the room. She had written the correction on a folded napkin and passed it to Cole. Cole had used it. The deal had survived. Afterward, he had told her, "He should know what you did." Mara had answered, "Let him have the win, he needs one." Now Cole looked at the floor. He said nothing. Mara's heart sank. Then Damon walked toward the entrance. He did not look surprised to see her. He looked annoyed. That was the answer. "Hey, knew." "Mara," Damon said loudly, turning his voice into a performance, "why are you doing this tonight?" Mara stared at him. "I came because I am your wife." Damon glanced toward the cameras. "This is a corporate event." Tessa stepped beside him. Not behind him. Beside him. Mara's eyes caught the diamond flame necklace on Tessa's throat. 2 months earlier, Mara had found the receipt in Damon's jacket. When she asked about it, Damon said it was a gift for a client's wife. Mara had believed him because the truth would have hurt too much. Now the truth was shining around Tessa's neck. Mara looked at Damon. "So she is corporate and I am not." Damon said nothing. His silence was worse than an answer. Tessa lifted her chin. Damon needs people around him who understand the level he's operating on now. Mara's voice dropped. "Is that what I am to you, Damon, a lower level?" For 1 second, guilt touched his face. Then Elaine said, "Don't let her do this here." Tessa leaned close to him. "Call security before she performs." Damon raised his hand. "Security." The hallway went still. Reed appeared at the far end. Mara saw the silver pin on his lapel first, then the way he walked, measured, controlled, familiar. Her throat tightened. Damon pointed toward her. "Mr. Cross, this is the disruption I warned you about. Remove her before she embarrasses my company." Reed's eyes moved from Damon to Tessa to Elaine to Cole. then to the phones raised around them. He understood the cruelty before he understood the woman. Then he turned to Mara. Their eyes met. The party noise seemed to vanish. Recognition did not arrive loudly. It came in pieces. The shape of her face beneath years of married silence. The stillness she used when people tried to corner her. The eyes of the young woman who once placed a silver compass beside his hospital bed. Reed recognized her. And in that silent second, Mara knew the door Damon had tried to close had just remembered her name. The hallway stopped breathing. Damon's order still hung in the air. Remove her before she embarrasses my company. Tessa's lips curved in satisfaction. Elaine lifted her chin as if the punishment had finally arrived. Cole looked down, pale and frozen. Around them, phones stayed raised, waiting to capture Mara's shame. Damon expected obedience. Tessa expected force. Elaine expected Mara to break. Mara expected the truth. But Reed did not move toward her. His hand slipped inside his jacket. Tessa smiled wider, thinking he was reaching for a security device. Damon relaxed, already preparing the disappointed face he would show the crowd when his wife was escorted away. Then Reed pulled out a small silver compass. Mara's face changed. No one else understood why. The compass was old now. Its silver edges were worn, but Mara knew it instantly. Years ago, she had placed it beside Reed's hospital bed after he saved her. She had been younger then, frightened, but pretending not to be. Reed had been injured. Sitting upright like pain was something he could command to leave. She had said, "For the next time you stand in front of trouble." Reed had looked at the compass, then at her. "A guard can block a door," he had told her. "That does not mean he understands the person behind it." Mara had answered, "Then stand where truth stands." Now, in the bright hallway outside Damon's ballroom, Reed closed his hand around the compass. He looked at Mara, not as a guard looking at a problem, not as a man looking at a helpless woman, as someone who remembered her before Damon had reduced her to an unwanted guest. Then Reed stepped back and bowed deeply. The movement broke the room. A gasp moved through the crowd. One photographer forgot to take the picture. Tessa's smile vanished. Damon stared at Reed like the man had suddenly stopped speaking a language he understood. Reed's voice was low, but everyone heard it. "Miss Vale, forgive me, I did not know he meant you." The name landed harder than any shout. "Vale." Whispers spread fast. "Vale." As in Sealer's veil. "Wait, Vale Shield Trust. Isn't that tied to Heart Meridian's early financing?" Damon forced a laugh, but it came out thin. "This is ridiculous. Her name is Mara Hart." Reed straightened. "Her married name is Hart. Her name is Vale." For a moment, Mara could not speak. That sentence did something Damon had not done in years. It gave her back to herself. Tessa stepped forward quickly. "This is obviously staged. Mara called him here because she wanted attention." Reed looked at her. "I was hired by Mr. Hart through Northline Security." Tessa's mouth opened, then closed. The first crack in her control appeared right there. Damon snapped, "I hired you, you work for me." Reed's face remained calm. "You hired event security. You did not hire me to participate in the public humiliation of your wife." The word humiliation changed the hallway. People who had been recording for entertainment suddenly realized they were recording evidence. Elaine tried to recover the room. "My son has the right to protect his event." Mara turned to her. "From what, Elaine, his wife, or the truth?" The crowd murmured. Damon lowered his voice. "Mara, stop, you're embarrassing yourself." Mara looked at him. and the pain in her eyes was quiet enough to hurt everyone watching. No, Damon, I embarrassed myself for years by protecting you from the truth of what you became. The words reached back to the night before, to the speech she had fixed, to every lie she had softened for him. She had spent years making him sound better than he was. Now she was done. She turned to Cole. Put the original deck on the screen. Cole went pale. Tessa frowned. What original deck? Mara answered, the archived company deck before the Veil Shield Trust disclosure slide was deleted. The investors reacted at once. Damon's face changed. Not with anger now. With fear. That fear told the room she was not lying. Cole's hands trembled. Damon whispered, Cole, don't. Mara's voice stayed calm. Cole, you have spent years knowing who helped build this company. Tonight you choose whether to stay silent for him or tell the truth in front of everyone. Before Cole could move, Raid's phone rang. The caller ID showed one name. Sealer's Veil. Reed looked at Mara first. He did not answer until she gave the smallest nod. That small pause mattered. He did not take over her moment. He asked without words. Then he answered and placed the call on speaker. Sealer's voice filled the entrance. Damon Hart. Damon turned pale. Sealers continued, calm and cold. My daughter gave you her loyalty. My trust gave your company its first safety net. Tonight you tried to repay both by turning her into a spectacle. Damon swallowed. Mr. Veil, this is being misunderstood. Sealers answered, a misunderstanding is when a name is missing by mistake. This was a deletion. The words struck Mara because they named everything. The missing slide. The missing guest list. The missing wife. Sealers said, Cole, restore the original presentation package from the archive, not Mara's copy, the company's version history. That instruction mattered. It meant the proof would not look like something Mara brought from home. It meant the ballroom would see Damon exposed by his own system. Cole moved toward the control station. Nolan Pierce, 27, was the event technician hired to manage the party screens and sound system. He sat behind two laptops with headphones around his neck, frozen between fear of Damon and fear of becoming part of a cover-up. Tessa pointed at him. Nolan, do not touch that screen. Cole reached the laptop first. Nolan, Cole said, his voice shaking but clear, open the event deck version history. Use the server archive. Keep the audit log visible. Nolan swallowed. Damon stepped forward. Reed stepped once into his path. He did not touch Damon. He did not threaten him. He simply stood there. Damon stopped. The giant screen flickered. Damon's face disappeared. The slogan vanished. Then the screen showed the company system archive. A list of versions appeared. Original Investor Event Deck, uploaded by Cole Brenner. Revision 2, edited by Tessa Royce. Final Party Deck, approved by Damon Hart. Tessa's face drained of color. Cole clicked the original deck. The deleted slide appeared. Silent Partnership Disclosure, Veil Shield Trust / Hart Meridian Group. A second document followed. Early Expansion Guarantee, Veil Shield Trust. Then a third. Risk Protection Agreement, authorized by Sealer's Veil. The room erupted in whispers. Tessa's hand flew to the diamond necklace at her throat. Elaine stared at Damon like she no longer knew which version of his life was real. Mara stepped to the registration table, the same table where her name had been denied. When Damon had no office, I found the door. When investors doubted him, my father's trust carried the risk. When his numbers failed, I corrected them. When his speeches sounded desperate, I gave them dignity. Her voice trembled once, then steadied. I never asked to be announced because I thought love did not need witnesses. She looked around the room. But tonight, Damon invited witnesses. Damon opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Mara slowly removed her wedding ring. She did not throw it. She placed it on the registration table, the same place they had tried to erase her. Then she looked at the screen. You wanted me removed from your company party. Now let everyone see what happens when the woman you erased stops protecting your image. Behind her, Reed stood one step away. Not touching, not claiming, not rescuing, just standing where truth stood. And as the investors turned from Mara to Damon, the celebration began to feel less like a party and more like the first hearing of a trial no one had prepared for. Continuing from your uploaded script, here are the revised scenes 6:10 with logic gaps tightened and the story continuity preserved. The giant screen exposed Damon before he could build another lie. Across the ballroom, the words burned in white letters. Silent Partnership Disclosure, Veil Shield Trust / Heart Meridian Group. For several seconds, nobody moved. The gold lights, the champagne glasses, the flowers, the cameras, the polished stage, everything Damon had built to glorify himself now stood around him like witnesses. Damon stared at the screen as if it had betrayed him. But the screen had only shown what he betrayed first. Tessa moved before anyone else. She rushed toward the control table where Nolan Pierce sat frozen behind two laptops with the event feed still live. Turn that off, Tessa snapped. Now. Nolan looked from her to the screen, then to Cole, then to the investors watching every movement. Tessa leaned closer. I am the PR director, cut the feed. Before Nolan could touch the keyboard, Cole stepped forward. Don't touch it. Tessa turned on him. Cole, have you lost your mind? Cole looked at the screen, then at Mara. For years, he had known enough to feel guilty, but not enough to be brave. He knew Mara corrected Damon's early numbers. He knew important doors opened after Mara made quiet calls. He knew the Veil Shield Trust had carried risk when Damon had nothing but ambition. But knowing the truth in private had been easier than defending it in public. Now every investor was watching. Cole swallowed. That slide was part of the archived investor disclosure package, he said. It should never have been removed from any presentation connected to the expansion announcement. The room stirred with whispers. Damon stepped toward him. You work for me. Cole's hands trembled around the folder. I work for Heart Meridian, and apparently I should have remembered that sooner. The words struck Damon harder than a shout. His circle was cracking. Tessa saw it and tried to save the room. She turned to the guests with a bright, false smile. Ladies and gentlemen, this is a private marital matter being exaggerated by someone who is clearly emotional tonight. Mara looked at her calmly. Tessa, you helped remove my name from the guest list. You helped remove the trust disclosure. You helped change the speech so Damon could say he stood alone. Tessa laughed, but the sound shook. You have no proof of that. Mara did not answer. She only looked at Cole. Cole moved to Nolan's laptop and opened the event file history. Nolan did not resist this time. He turned the screen slightly so the guests could see the audit log instead of only the slide. Line by line, the room saw it. Slide 6 deleted by Tessa Royce. Speech revised by Tessa Royce. Final deck approved by Damon Hart. Guest status changed by Tessa Royce. Mara Hart moved to hold at entry. Security note added, personal disruption risk. The ballroom shifted. Before, some guests had watched Mara like she was a jealous wife making a scene. Now they saw a plan. A coordinated erasure. Elaine grabbed Damon's arm. Damon, tell them this is wrong. Damon did not answer fast enough. That delay answered for him. Victor Lawn, 58, was a senior investor in Heart Meridian's planned expansion deal and one of the men Damon had spent months trying to impress. His gray suit was neat, but his face had lost all warmth. Mr. Hart, Victor said, did you approve the removal of a required disclosure from the presentation tied to tonight's expansion announcement? Damon forced a smile. This is being taken out of context. Mara's voice came softly. That was always his favorite sentence when the truth made him uncomfortable. Damon turned on her. For 1 second, the polished mask fell. You should have stayed home. The room heard it. The cameras caught it. The employees heard it. The investors heard it. Mara did not flinch, but something inside her settled into place. Damon was not ashamed of what he had done. He was only ashamed that it had failed. Silas's voice came through Reed's phone again. Mr. Hart, careful. Every word after this may become evidence. Damon froze. Reed stood beside Mara, still 1 step away. He did not touch her. He did not speak over her. He simply held the space around her steady, as if his job was not to save her voice, but to make sure no one stole it. Tessa felt the room slipping away and chose cruelty. She looked at Mara. You hid your father's money because you knew Damon would never want to look like your charity case. The words cut deep because a small part of them touched Mara's fear. She had hidden her name because she loved Damon. She had hidden the help because she did not want him to feel owned. She had buried her power so he could stand taller. Mara took 1 slow breath. No, she said, I hid my name because I wanted to know if I could be loved without it. The ballroom went still. Mara looked at Damon. And for a while, I thought I was. Something flickered across Damon's face. A memory. Years earlier, after his first failed investor meeting, he had sat with Mara on the floor of the empty office. Rain had tapped against the window. His voice had cracked when he said, If I ever become someone important, promise me you'll remind me who I was before the applause. Mara had smiled through tears. I won't have to, you'll remember. Back in the ballroom, Damon remembered. But he did not apologize. His pride stood taller than his grief. You should have told me, he said. Mara's eyes shone. I tried to love you in a way that protected your pride. You used that mercy to erase me. No one spoke. Then Mara turned to the investors. I am not here to take a company away from honest employees. I am here to stop a man from building his throne on lies. Silas's voice followed, calm and legal. Effective immediately, Vale Shield Trust is freezing all discretionary support connected to Heart Meridian's expansion package pending disclosure review. The word discretionary mattered. It meant Silas was not destroying the company in anger. It meant he was enforcing the condition Damon had tried to hide. The room erupted. Damon stepped back as if the words had struck him. Victor Lawn turned to the other investors. Until the disclosure issue is reviewed, our expansion commitment is suspended. Another board observer muttered, We cannot move forward under undisclosed governance risk. The New Era Party collapsed in real time. Tessa reached for Damon's hand. He pulled away. That small movement broke their alliance faster than any accusation. Elaine glared at Mara. You ruined him. Mara looked at her. No, Elaine, I stopped hiding what he ruined in himself. Then Mara turned to the registration table. Her wedding ring still rested there. For one breath, Damon looked like he thought she might take it back. Instead, Mara picked up the printed guest list where her name had been missing and placed it beside the ring. Keep both, she said. One is the name you erased. The other is the promise you broke. Then she walked out. Reed followed one respectful step behind her. The cameras kept recording. But for the first time that night, Mara was no longer the spectacle. Damon was. And as the ballroom doors closed behind her, Damon's silence felt less like defeat and more like the beginning of a war he was not ready to lose. The party did not continue after Mara walked out. It broke apart. Servers stopped pouring champagne. Employees stood in corners, whispering with wide eyes. Investors gathered near the boardroom with tight faces. Phones buzzed again and again as clips from the ballroom began spreading before Damon could control the story. Mara walked down the private hallway with her head high, but every step felt heavier than the last. The ring was gone from her finger. Her name had been restored in front of everyone, but her heart still felt like something had been pulled out by the root. Behind her, Damon's voice came. Mara. For the first time all night, he said her name without performance. She stopped, but she did not turn. Earlier she had wanted him to see her. Now he wanted her attention, and she made him wait for it. Damon came closer, breathing hard. You made your point. Mara turned slowly. Her face was calm, but her eyes were tired. No, Damon, you made mine. Damon looked left and right, checking who could hear. That one small movement told her everything. Even now, after everything, he was watching the room before he looked at her pain. He lowered his voice. This got out of control. Reed moved slightly, not in a threatening way, but enough to stand between Damon and Mara if he had to. Damon glared at him. This is between me and my wife. Mara answered before Reed could. You ended that privilege when you made it a public performance. Damon's face tightened, then his voice softened, almost breaking. I was angry. Tessa pushed too far. My mother pushed too far. The party got out of hand. Mara listened, and something old inside her woke up. This was not the first time Damon had apologized by handing the blame to someone else. 2 years earlier, at a smaller company dinner, he had introduced her as my wife Mara. She doesn't really understand the business side, but she keeps me grounded. Everyone had laughed. Mara had laughed too, because she did not want to embarrass him. Later, in the car, she told him it hurt. Damon had sighed and said, Don't make everything emotional. That night, she apologized for being sensitive. Now she understood. Tonight was not sudden. It was only the final version of many smaller humiliations she had forgiven. Damon reached for her hand. Mara stepped back. The movement was small, but it felt like a door closing. Damon looked wounded. After everything, we survived. Mara's voice softened, and that made it sadder. I survived loving you. You survived being loved by me. Damon had no answer. At the end of the hallway, Tessa appeared. Her makeup was still perfect, but her control was gone. Elaine followed behind her, furious and pale. Tessa said quickly, Damon, the investors are asking for you. We need to issue a statement before Mara's side frames this. Mara turned to her. My side is the documents. Tessa's eyes narrowed. You think this makes you noble. You hid behind your father's money and waited for the perfect moment to humiliate him. Reed spoke for the first time since leaving the ballroom. She waited until he ordered a guard to remove her from a room her family helped secure. Tessa turned on him. And you, what are you, her loyal dog? The insult hung in the air. Reed did not react. No, he said, I am the witness Mr. Hart hired. Damon's face changed. He had hired the proof against himself. Cole entered the hallway with 2 people behind him. Janet Orlow, 55, was a senior board member at Hart Meridian and one of the few directors not personally chosen by Damon. Her face was steady, but her eyes were sharp with alarm. Miles Gray, 49, was the company's outside governance advisor. invited to the party to support the expansion announcement, but now walking like a man arriving at an emergency hearing. Cole's hands were still shaking. Damon, the board is requesting an emergency session. Damon snapped, the board answers to me. Cole looked at Mara, then back at him. Not entirely. Damon went still. He understood then. The Veil Shield Trust had not only helped him. It had rights if he broke disclosure rules, misrepresented company history, or damaged the company through misconduct connected to trust-backed agreements. Janet stepped forward. Mr. Hart, the board needs access to the full archive, the event communications, and all revision logs before anyone issues a public statement. Tessa said, that is unnecessary. This is an emotional incident. Miles looked at her. An emotional incident does not delete a disclosure slide, change a guest status, and instruct security to stop a legal spouse from entering an investor event. Tessa went quiet. Then Sealers arrived. No shouting, no rush, no drama. He walked into the hallway with the calm of a man who did not need to prove power. Elaine shrank back slightly, Tessa's confidence drained from her face. Damon forced himself upright. Mr. Vale. Sealers ignored the greeting and looked at Mara. Are you hurt? Mara answered quietly, not in any way he can deny. Sealers looked at Damon. Then we proceed legally. Damon panicked. Legally, this is a marriage issue. Sealers' voice stayed calm. No, you used corporate staff, company security, event resources, presentation materials, investor disclosures, and public cameras to stage a personal humiliation. You made it corporate. A woman in a grey coat stepped forward. Evelyn Marks, 46, was Mara's attorney, prepared by Sealers because he had feared Damon might cross a line tonight. She did not look dramatic. She looked organized, which somehow frightened Damon more. Evelyn opened a folder. Mrs. Hart, we have the original disclosure records, event revision logs, security instructions, entrance footage, and server access records. We will preserve them tonight. Damon looked at Reed. You recorded me. Reed answered, the venue recorded the event. Your own security order required full surveillance coverage. Tessa whispered, Damon, don't say anything else. Mara looked at her. That may be the first useful advice you've given him. Elaine exploded. You ungrateful little snake, my son gave you a life. Mara turned to her. Her voice did not rise. No, Elaine, I gave your son a life he became ashamed to share with me. Elaine had no answer. Damon finally looked afraid. What do you want? Mara stared at him, remembering the empty office, the shaking hands, the man who once needed her belief. Then she said, I wanted a husband, now I want a divorce. Damon's pride cracked. Mara, don't do this. She answered, you already did. Outside, rain fell softly. Reed opened the door for Mara, but did not guide her through it. He let her walk first. Sealers noticed. Mara noticed too. As she stepped into the rain, Damon called after her. You'll regret turning everyone against me. Mara turned back. Rain touched her face. No, Damon, I regret the years I turned myself against my own truth to keep standing beside you. Then she left. Behind her, Damon stood under the lights with nothing left but pride, panic, and a story he would soon try to rewrite. By morning, Damon's downfall was already on every screen. The first clip showed him pointing at Mara and saying, remove her before she embarrasses my company. The second showed Reed bowing and saying, Miss Vale. The third showed the giant screen changing from Damon's smiling face to the words. Silent Partnership Disclosure, Veil Shield Trust / Hart Meridian Group. The fourth clip was the quietest, but it hurt the most. Mara removing her wedding ring and placing it on the registration table where her name had been denied. People argued online before breakfast. Some called Mara powerful, some said she had exposed a cruel husband, others said she had planned it all, some asked why a wife would shame her husband in public, others answered that Damon had chosen the public first. The story did not collapse Damon all at once. It became a storm. And Damon, who had built his life around controlling rooms, could not control the world outside one. Inside his office, the blinds were closed. Tessa stood near the conference table, pale but sharp-eyed, her phone in one hand and a printed statement in the other. Elaine sat stiffly beside her, angry enough to shake. Marcy Dale, 45, was the crisis consultant Tessa had called before sunrise to protect Damon's public image. She had spent years helping wealthy men sound sorry without admitting guilt. Marcy read the draft aloud. Mara Hart, estranged spouse of Damon Hart, disrupted a private business event in an attempt to weaponize family connections during divorce negotiations. Damon stared at the word estranged. They had not been estranged before the party. They had been broken, yes. Cold, yes. But not separated. Tessa saw his hesitation. They don't know that, she said. Elaine leaned forward. Say she was unstable. People believe emotional women are unstable. Damon looked at the statement again. For 1 second, he seemed to understand that this was the same plan as the night before. Make Mara look emotional, make himself look reasonable. Then his pride chose for him. Send it, he said. Across town, Mara sat in a quiet suite at Silas's estate. There was no victory around her, no celebration, no champagne, just silence, pale morning light, and a wedding album someone from her house had packed into a box. She had not asked for it. Still, she opened it. The first photo showed Damon at the altar, younger and softer, with tears in his eyes. Mara remembered his whisper that day. I don't care where you come from, I only care that you came to me. She had believed him. Now, looking at the picture, she understood the tragedy. Damon had not cared where she came from because he had not thought it mattered. When her name finally mattered, he hated it. Silas entered, but did not speak right away. He waited until she closed the album. Then he released a statement. Mara read it. Her sadness did not leave. But something clean and hot rose through it. He is still trying to write me as the problem. Silas looked at her with quiet pain. Then stopped editing his drafts. The words landed deep. For years, Mara had fixed Damon's speeches, softened his sharp edges, corrected his mistakes, and made him sound better than he was. Now he wanted to use one more false story. This time, she would not repair it. Evelyn opened a folder on the table. Inside were the original party deck, the deleted disclosure slide, guest list change logs, emails from Tessa, security instructions, entrance footage, company card records tied to Tessa's necklace, Cole's internal memo about Mara's early work, and Reed's formal incident report. Mara's eyes paused at Reed's name. Silas noticed, but he said nothing. Later, Reed entered the legal conference room. He looked professional, calm, and careful with the space around Mara. He did not stand too close. He did not act familiar. He placed a written statement on the table. In it, he confirmed that Damon had ordered him to stop Mara specifically. Tessa had described Mara as a disruption. Mara had never threatened anyone. Damon had ordered her removal in public. Reed had recognized her only when he saw her face. The bow had not been staged. When he finished, Mara looked at him. Thank you. Reed shook his head slightly. You don't have to thank me for telling the truth. The sentence stayed with her. Damon had expected loyalty to mean lying. Reed understood loyalty as truth. By afternoon, the smear campaign began to break apart. Jonah Price, 39, was a business reporter covering the Heart Meridian scandal after several employees sent him the public clips and portions of the company's statement. He caught Damon outside the boardroom with cameras behind him. "Mr. Hart, why did your company call Mara your estranged spouse when internal records listed her as your wife until the day of the party?" Damon froze. Another journalist called out, "Why was the Veil Shield Trust disclosure deleted from the presentation?" Tessa tried to push through the crowd. No comment. But photographers caught the diamond flame necklace at her throat. Soon, company card records connected the necklace to Damon's office account. The necklace became more than proof of an affair. It became a symbol of everything: Damon spending company money on the woman who helped erase the wife whose family had protected the company. By evening, the board acted. Damon was placed on administrative leave pending governance review. Tessa was suspended for misuse of company resources, manipulation of event access, and unauthorized changes to investor-facing materials. Elaine called Mara and left a furious voicemail. "You will never find another man who tolerates your pride." Mara listened once. Then she deleted it. Old Mara would have explained. New Mara no longer argued with people committed to misunderstanding her. Then Damon's message arrived. "Please meet me. No lawyers, no fathers, no bodyguards, just us." For 1 second, the old wound opened. Then another message came. "Mrs. Hart, Mr. Hart has contacted several private security freelancers today. I recommend all meetings remain documented." It was from Reed. Not jealous. Not personal. Just facts. Mara stared at both messages and finally understood. Damon's request was not love. It was control, looking for a private room. She replied, "Any meeting will happen with lawyers present." Damon answered almost immediately, "You've changed." Mara typed back, "No, I stopped disappearing." She set the phone down, but it lit up again before she could breathe. This time, the message was not from Damon. It was from Evelyn. He just filed first. Damon filed for divorce first. Not because he wanted freedom. Because he wanted the headline. By sunrise, his legal team had already shaped the story. Mara had trapped him with hidden wealth, used her father's influence to control his company, and humiliated him when he tried to move on. It was his last attempt to make himself the victim. But this time, Mara did not panic. She sat across from Evelyn in a quiet legal office, her hands folded over a folder thick with evidence. The woman who once edited Damon's speeches now watched his lies arrive on paper and did not reach for a pen to fix them. At the end of the table sat Lydia Crane, 52, the divorce mediator assigned to help settle the separation between Mara and Damon before it became a longer court fight. She had handled rich divorces before, but even she paused when she read Damon's claim. "Mr. Hart says you used financial influence to pressure him throughout the marriage," Lydia said carefully. Mara looked at Damon. He sat across the table in a dark suit, his face tight with anger. He no longer looked like the proud man on the ballroom screen. He looked like a man trying to hold smoke in his hands. Evelyn opened the evidence file. "The trust supported Heart Meridian Group," she said. "Not Damon personally. The records show Mrs. Hart requested that the support remain quiet to protect his pride, not to control him." Damon's jaw tightened. She lied about who she was. Mara's voice was soft. "I hid my name, you hid your character." The room went still. Cole testified next. His voice shook at first, but he did not run from the truth anymore. He admitted that Mara had helped shape early business materials, corrected financial projections, and warned him about mistakes that could have damaged the first expansion. Damon stared at him like betrayal, had finally found his side of the table. Cole said quietly, Damon knew help existed. He just never asked where it came from because not knowing helped him stay proud. That sentence landed heavily. For the first time, Damon looked less angry than afraid. The lie he had told himself for years was breaking in front of him. He had not built everything alone. He had simply accepted help quietly, then punished the woman who gave it. Tessa did not stand beside him. Once the board suspended her and investigators questioned the company card purchases, she released a statement saying she had only been following executive direction. Damon read it alone in the hallway. The woman he had placed beside him at the party abandoned him the moment standing beside him became expensive. Elaine blamed everyone except her son. She called Mara cruel, Silas controlling, Cole weak, and Tessa ungrateful. But she never once asked why Damon had needed so many people to lie for him. That was where Damon had learned it. Image first, truth later. Accountability never. Heart Meridian survived, but Damon did not remain in control. The board removed him from executive authority during the governance review. Vale Shield Trust did not seize the company or punish employees for Damon's sins. Instead, it forced new oversight, protected the workers, and separated the company from the man who had tried to turn it into his throne. Mara did not celebrate. When the final divorce papers came, she sat alone with the pen in her hand. For a moment, she remembered Damon's proposal. Years earlier, near the empty first office, he had held out a modest ring with shaking hands. "One day I'll give you more," he had said. Mara had smiled through tears. "Just don't give me less of yourself." Now she looked at the signature line and understood. He had given her more around him. More money, more rooms, more applause, more distance, but less truth, less tenderness, less of the man she had loved. Mara signed. After the divorce, she returned fully to the name Mara Vale, not as a retreat into her father's power, but as a return to herself. Then she started the Unseen Hands Initiative, a foundation for women who had helped build families, companies, and dreams, but had been erased from the credit. One of the first women she helped was Grace Hallow, 41, a former restaurant manager whose husband had taken public credit for a business she built from the kitchen up. When Grace cried during her first meeting, Mara did not tell her to be strong. She simply said, "You already were. That is why they used you for so long." Reed remained near the legal process, but never too near Mara's private life. He gave statements when needed. He confirmed facts. He attended meetings when security mattered, but he never arrived uninvited. He never claimed he had always known better. He never used Damon's failure to make himself look like the better man. That was why Mara noticed him more. Not because he stepped forward, because he knew when not to. One evening, months after the divorce was final, she found him in the garden at Silas's estate, standing near the stone path like a man more comfortable facing danger than emotion. "You keep leaving before anyone can thank you," Mara said. Reed looked at the trees. Gratitude can become a chain if a man enjoys it too much. Mara studied him. Damon had loved being needed. Reed feared misusing it. She asked, "Why did you request reassignment after my wedding?" Reed was silent for a long moment. "Because you chose a life outside your father's walls. I did not want my presence to make that choice feel watched." Mara's chest tightened. For years, she thought he had left because he disapproved of Damon. Now she knew he had left because he respected her freedom. "You could have warned me," she said. "Maybe," Reed answered, "but a warning from me would have sounded like judgment. You deserved to choose without another man deciding what was safe for you." Mara looked away before he could see her eyes fill. Then she asked about the compass. Reed took it from his jacket. The silver was worn, the engraving had faded, but the words remained. "Stand where truth stands." "You kept it all these years?" she asked. "Some orders come from employers," he said. "Some come from moments that decide who you become." There was feeling between them now, quiet but real. But Reed did not confess anything. Instead, he said, "I resigned from Vale Shield today." Mara turned sharply. "Why?" "Because your father was my employer. You are his daughter. After everything you survived, any friendship between us should begin without duty standing in the room." The honesty of it made her silent. Damon had always wanted her love to come with usefulness. Reed was removing usefulness before asking for closeness. Months later, Mara visited Reed's new office. It was small, a desk, 2 chairs, a wall map, and the silver compass on a shelf. It reminded her of Damon's first office. But this time, the man inside it did not need her to make him feel bigger. Reed said, "I built it small on purpose." "Why?" "So I never mistake growth for character." Mara smiled. For the first time, it did not hurt. Nothing began with a kiss that day. It began with peace. And somewhere between the quiet office and the compass on the shelf, Mara realized her heart had not died in Damon's hands after all. The room rose to its feet before Mara finished speaking. Applause thundered through the hall, but for one sharp second, Mara could not move. A year ago, another room had gone silent while people raised phones to watch her shame. Now those same bright lights fell on her name, her work, and the women who had come because they saw themselves in her story. Behind her, the screen did not show Damon's face. It showed the logo of her foundation. The Unseen Hands Initiative. Mara stood at the center of the stage in a soft white suit, her hair pinned back, her eyes steady. She was no longer hiding behind anyone's dream. She had built something with her own name on it. The room was filled with women who understood quiet erasure. One had built her husband's restaurant but was never listed as co-owner. One had managed a family business for 10 years while her spouse gave interviews alone. One had helped launch a startup, then was written out after funding arrived. Mara looked at them and felt the ache of recognition. Then she said the final line of her speech. "For years, I thought love meant making someone else's success easier to carry. I know now love should never require a woman to disappear. If your hands helped build it, your name deserves to stand beside it." The applause grew louder. Silas watched from the back of the room, emotional but controlled. He had spent years protecting Mara with walls, guards, warnings, and quiet power. Now he watched her protect others with truth. Cole stood near the side aisle. He was not treated like a hero. He did not deserve that. But he was there, working under reformed leadership at Heart Meridian, trying to live honestly after years of silence. Redemption had not erased his cowardice, but it had given him a place to begin again. Damon was not invited. Still far away in a smaller office under another company's name, he watched a clip of Mara's speech on his phone. On his desk sat an old photo from the first office signing, the one where Mara wore the ivory dress. He stared at it for a long time. Regret was there. But regret could not rebuild what arrogance had destroyed. Tessa was somewhere else too, trying to repair her career. Her name still followed the scandal. People remembered the woman who helped erase a wife and ended up exposing herself. Her punishment was not dramatic. It was worse. She became a warning in every room she once wanted to control. Back at the gala, Mara stepped down from the stage. Reed waited near the side. Not by the door. Not watching exits. Not standing like a guard. He stood among the people who loved her. That mattered. He was no longer assigned to protect her. He had resigned from Vale Shield months ago. He had built his own small firm, made his own name, and waited until no duty stood between them. Now he was her chosen partner. Mara walked to him, and only then did the room notice the silver compass in his hand. The same compass from the hospital. The same compass from the ballroom. The same compass that had survived her marriage, her humiliation, her divorce. And her healing. Reed looked at her softly. "You once told me to stand where truth stands." Mara smiled. "You did." He shook his head. "No, you did first. I only followed the direction." That was why she loved him. He never tried to become the hero of her story. He only honored the strength she had already carried. Later that evening, the gala lights faded into warm garden light. The wedding was small. No corporate stage. No loud spectacle. No crowd waiting to judge her. Only simple flowers, quiet music, and people who knew what Mara had survived. Clara Voss, 57, was a longtime family friend of Sela's and the woman chosen to lead Mara and Reed's wedding ceremony. She had known Mara as a guarded girl, a hidden wife, and now as a woman standing openly in her own name. Sela's walked Mara down the garden path. Before they reached Reed, he paused and looked at his daughter. For years, he had feared the world would break her if he loosened his grip. Now he saw the truth. Mara had never needed to be controlled to be safe. She needed to be trusted. His voice lowered. "Your mother would have liked this version of you." Mara's eyes filled. "The one who came home." Silas shook his head. "The one who came back to herself." Mara held his arm tighter. At the altar, Reed stood waiting. He did not look like Damon had looked on their wedding day. Damon had looked like a man receiving devotion he desperately needed. Reed looked like a man being trusted with something he knew he must never misuse. Clara began in a gentle voice. When it was time for vows, Reed looked at Mara. "I will never ask you to shrink so I can stand taller. I will never call your strength difficult because it exposes my weakness. I will stand with you, not in front of you, unless you ask me to, and even then, only until you are ready to step forward." Mara's voice trembled, but it did not break. "I spent years mistaking silence for love. You taught me that respect can be quiet without making a woman invisible. I choose you because you never tried to own the parts of me you protected." They exchanged rings. The guests applauded. Then Reed did something unexpected. He stepped back. For one breath, the garden became the ballroom again in Mara's mind. The entrance, the phones, the humiliation, the compass, the bow. But this time, there was no cruelty in the room. No Damon waiting to command. No Tessa waiting to smile. No Elaine waiting to shame her. No screen restoring what had been deleted. Only Reed. He lowered his head. A bow. Not of duty. Not of security. Not of obligation to Sela's veil. A bow of love. Mara stepped forward, placed her hands over his, and gently lifted his head. She did not need a man bowing forever. She needed one who knew when to honor her and when to stand beside her. The first time Reed cross-bowed to Mara Vale, it exposed the man who tried to erase her. The second time he bowed, it honored the woman who had finally stopped erasing herself. Together, Mara and Reed walked down the garden path. Not him leading, not her following, side by side. In the distance, Silas watched with quiet pride. The silver compass rested in Mara's hand now, its needle pointed north. And for the first time in years, Mara did not wonder where she belonged. She knew, with herself first, with Reed beside her. And somewhere beyond the garden lights, another unseen woman was about to find the courage to say her own name.